Yeah, I asked him to come down and talk to us, and he very kindly has agreed, and here he is. So without further ado, Jacob Collier.
Right. Hello. It's so nice to be here in this really lovely part of town. I suppose it's out of town for me because I've come from London town, and so it's really nice to be on the sea. It's like really fresh, and it's really windy, which is really awesome as well. So it's nice, and there's so many people, and it's just lovely to be speaking to you, and I'm going to do that for a while. I suppose today I'd like to talk a bit about my process of making music and living in the world and arranging music and making videos and living on the internet, which is a pretty scary place to be honest. And a bit about the... so I'll be talking about music and life and, music and living on the internet and making videos and the future and things like that. And I suppose if anyone has any questions at any point in this procedure, then feel free to just put your hand up and ask it, because I will be happy to answer. Yes, I will. Okay, it'd be cool, I think, to start with a video that I made quite recently. I put it up last month. It's been kind of really nicely received, and it's been a huge kind of pleasure. It's a bit mind-blowing for me to kind of see the response to something that I made in my home, in my kind of space. And it's really lovely to have got that kind of response. Yeah, it's really, really nice. So I don't know if we can link it up to there, but here it is. This is my arrangement of Pure Imagination from the 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory film, and I'm singing the part, and I play a solo on my melodica as well. Oh no. Thank you very much. So that's something I made. I think it'd be nice to kind of talk about how I kind of go creatively from the very beginning to the very end. I made that in a total of 1 week. I kind of said, this is the week where I make Pure Imagination, and I locked myself in. Well, I didn't lock myself in, but I stayed at home for a week, and by the end of the week I put it up. And I think that's quite an important thing to bear in mind. I was on my holidays from the academy. I studied at the Royal Academy of Music in London, which is really, really lovely. And I was on holiday at the time, and I could have theoretically spent quite a long time arranging that, but I had to put these kind of boundaries on myself. Otherwise, I really would have filled the whole holiday with that. That's something I do think is quite important. So to give yourself a time limit and to fill it with your energy, your creative thing, because otherwise it could last a long time. And it's important to kind of keep that under control, I think. That's a kind of small point. But essentially, what I look for in a song when I'm thinking what to arrange is a simple song. So a song which, first of all, I love. I love that song. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's beautiful. I grew up knowing that song and listening to it and enjoying it and loving it. And it's the same with Isn't She Lovely? It's the same with Oh What a Beautiful Morning and the other things that I've done. And these songs are, they are legendary songs, and in essence they're very simple. The melodies are very simple, and I think if you start complex and try and superimpose complex on top of it, it becomes very cluttered and very messy and very kind of hard to access. It becomes less accessible. So yes, I think a song which is simple in essence gives you far more scope for arranging, so it means that you can start from one place and end up in lots of different places instead of starting in lots of different places and trying to end up in even more different places, and you get into too many different places. So Pure Imagination is a very simple song, as is Isn't She Lovely? And that means that you can take the melody out of the context of the original song. So for example, Isn't She Lovely? The melody is quite repetitive. It uses the motif of the song. And that's essentially the song. That's what's memorable in the song. That's what continually comes back. And if you say to someone, "Have you heard the song Isn't She Lovely?" then that's the bit that they'll sing. And that, in essence, is simple, as I said. And so what I find absolutely fascinating and interesting, and continually interesting, is to take something like that, which is a simple piece of fragment of information, and to kind of interpret it in different ways. And I'll talk a bit later about harmony and how it's really interesting and exciting, and how all the different possibilities for going into harmony and taking a melody and making it fun with harmony. But I think it's really important before I do that to kind of say, whereas you could jump in and just throw in all of your creativity and all of your harmonic knowledge into everything, and as I said before, that it really just becomes really cluttered. And I think it's important to kind of affirm the song that you're arranging without kind of just blotting it out with all your information. You have to make the song speak for itself as well, because I mean the songs I've chosen are such great songs that it would be hard for them not to kind of speak through an arrangement. But I don't want to blot them out with my harmony. So I think it's important to look at it in the original context and then interpret it in your own way, in a new way. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about harmony and how you can take that little fragment and change it in all these different ways. I might go to the piano for this. I don't know if this will stretch. So this essentially, harmony is for me the most exciting thing about music. I love harmony, and it's endlessly interesting and endlessly inventive. I think it's really amazing to think that if you go back to kind of the 17th and 18th century music that was made before that, with each other and making harmonic sounds. But it wasn't until the time of people like Bach and what happened after that, where harmony in itself, the kind of vertical way of thinking, was actually born. And that's another thing. When you start from harmony, it can be easy just to be locked into your vertical way of thinking, so that all of your harmony is just chord after chord after chord with no sense of coherent line that runs through it. And that's something about, that's one of the reasons why it's so important to choose a melody which is really strong. Because if a melody is strong, then it will carry a line through. But at the same time, if you take every single different note in that chord, in that tune, and essentially take it out of its context, and find all the different chords that go with it, and essentially find random or awesome chords, and just put them next to each other, it won't be coherent. So that's when I think it's important to look at the harmony of the original song, and then combine it with some of your sort of harmonic discovery. I mean, everything that I've done harmonically, I've sort of done through self-discovery. I'd highly recommend hours and hours in a room with a piano or a guitar, or your voice, or a record player, or whatever it happens to be, and just doing some exploring. Because everything that I've found really comes from things that I have found just by playing and just by being inventive and not being afraid of boundaries and things like that. So if we take a note.
This might help if we just have this here.
That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, great, awesome. Okay. So essentially, if you take a note, for example, G. This is G. And you look at every single chord which G could be a part of. If you think in simple terms of harmony, as in triadic harmony, which is quite kind of plain and basic, which I absolutely love, then G is a member of C major, which is that, and G major, which is that, and also E minor, and essentially those are some basic kind of findings within that chord of that note G. But then if you take it a bit further and you say, well, actually, A minor 7 is a part of A minor 7, and D minor 7, and then F major, and B flat, and A flat, and G flat, and E minor, and all these different things. There's so much you can find, so much you can play with, and it's important to kind of fill your toolbox with a whole lot of kit and harmonic information that you can use with the knowledge that you're using with respect to the original melody. So, for example, if you take a part of Isn't She Lovely, for example, that's the little bit that I sang before. Those notes, all of those notes, carry with them a huge arsenal of stuff that is possible to do. I mean, it's almost infinite if you think about the entire song and the progressions that you could put into that song. So if we look at that little portion of melody, I mean A is the arrival point. It's the beginning of it's the kind of beginning of the bar. So that's quite a good note to kind of start on if you're thinking about arranging that bar. I mean the original harmony is this. I mean it goes it's E minor and then it goes to A7 like that, and then so this first chord here, E minor. That's your starting point. And now, if you look at harmony in a sense of kind of different shades of kind of intensity and different shades of simplicity, then that is often quite helpful. So E minor, I mean, G doesn't sound out of place in G minor in the same way it sounds out of place in D flat 7. You know, so there's a whole lot of stuff between those two kind of pillars of harmony to kind of to use and to wield. In a sense, I think it's really interesting to think of every major chord and every minor chord as a kind of starting point for so that if you put the major chord, say for example if we're doing major chords, if you put the major chord in the center of a big timeline of sort of line of from very bright and very intense to very dark and very intense, and in the middle is quite neutral and very very simple and you know kind of not bland, but certainly kind of simpler than the really big, intense stuff. Then I think that's quite a good place to start. If we take, for example, C major as a chord, and we work down C major, we work down from C major into the kind of flatter sides. I don't know how many of you are kind of familiar with the whole circle of fifths idea, where something gets kind of sharper as it goes up the cycle of fifths, and it gets sharper up to there. That's a really lovely sound. And then if it goes down the cycle of fifths, it gets really dark and mellow or threatening or whatever it happens to be. If you turn fifths upside down, they become fourths, and fourths. So in that respect, if you go down by a fifth, if you go down by a fifth from C, you get to F. And that's the same as if you go up a fourth from C, which you get to an F as well. So it's possible to think of every major chord as an ascension from C in fifths, like that, and every minor chord as ascending from C in fourths, like that. This is kind of my own thing that I'm trying to work on at the moment a bit, but I think that's quite an interesting thing to think about. And if you go up, I mean, quite a lot of people think that C major, in essence, I mean, in jazz, for example, the harmony beginning with C major, if you go up the circle of fifths in thirds, like this, you go up in that scale is the Lydian scale, so that's like a really bright sound. Some people think that this is essentially the limit of C major, and everything between sort of C and then C major 7 and C major 7 with a ninth and with a sharp 11 and with a 6 and all that kind of stuff. They're all extensions of C, and I kind of think that in some ways is quite limited if you don't look further. So if you think of C starting from C and you go up in the circle of fifths and you continue to go up like this, there's a whole that's an unbelievable sound in itself. But there's a whole lot of different stuff that you can find with that. And eventually, what you'll find when you go up this cycle is that you'll use every single note in the chromatic scale. So every note that you can play on a piano will be there if you continue to go up in that way. Eventually, you'll find you'll get all the notes, and that essentially justifies any note being over a major chord, which is quite an exciting prospect, I suppose. And then if you go down the cycle of fifths, or up in fourths, as I said before, you will also reach a time where every single note has been used in that chromatic scale. So every single possible note has been used, and that also shows that every note could be used in a minor chord. I mean, this is really cool. This is exciting stuff, I think. And in that sense, every note could be used in a major chord from the point of view of minor, and also from the point of view of major. So, if you go up from C in fourths, so you're getting minor, I don't know if that's a word, and you get to D flat, which is there. That's quite dark and it's quite a mellow sound. And this is all stuff that I'm adding to my harmonic toolbox before I, approach arranging. A whole lot of that stuff is quite dark. I mean, imagine you're a painter when you're arranging. Imagine you're a painter and you've got a whole lot of paint that you've got at your on your brush or on your pad of paint, and you can, in the same way that if you fill a painting with bright colours, then that will say something very particular about the kind of painting that you're painting. It's quite a bright and whatever the connotations are. It depends what you're painting. In the same way that it depends what melody you're arranging. But if you use very bright colours or very dark colours, it will give a kind of specific message across. And I think it's really quite linked to the way that the audience member or the viewer of the painting feels when he listens to or looks at this kind of piece of art. And that is something, as an arranger, I think to bear in mind, the kind of emotional, like the sort of emotional impact of a chord, like for example E. This note is E, and if I chose a kind of warm and mellow sort of sound like this, which is quite warm and mellow, or things like this, and I'm voicing them quite densely in low registers. But then if I did something much darker like that, I have to be aware of the kind of impact that it will have on the piece. So I'm not going to use many of these sort of dark sounds because I'm aware that they'll kind of they might cloud it. They might cloud it up a bit. So I might harmonise something quite plainly or quite blandly before I throw in a chord like that, because otherwise it will have kind of effects which might be disastrous if a chord that's really dark comes in too early or in a place where you need it to be simple. And I think all this adds up to the idea that when you are arranging, you've got this paint and you've got this brush and you've got all the different colours that you can get when you mix paints together. Like if you combine the key of C with the key of D, then you get that sound. Or if you combine the key of C with the key of A flat, then you get these weird sounds that you can find, or E minor and D, you get that. And this is what a painter does when he paints. He combines things. He combines his yellows with his blues. Is it green? That makes, I'm not quite sure. Green, fantastic. And all this stuff. I mean, it's the same. And the amount of harmonic scope that you can find is massive. It's so exciting and really there's just so much you can do. And then there's the idea of putting the kind of traditional progressions that we get used to, like in classical music, when you go, that's a cadence into C, and that's really nice, and it makes you feel at home, and it makes you feel like you've arrived somewhere. Or in jazz, we have a thing called a 2-5-1, and that's where the chord 2 leads to the chord 5, which leads to the chord 1, and that's a cadence to chord 1. So it's a place where you feel like you've arrived at somewhere. So in C, that'll be well, we've arrived at C and we're home, and obviously that C could be like this C or this C, and they're all different kinds of Cs you can find. And so that's when it becomes interesting, when you find notes in a melody which work with a number of different cadences to a key. So in terms of kind of life or painting, that is like when you direct something to a really specific place where you say, okay, we've been here and now we're going to land here. And it doesn't necessarily mean we have to stay there, but it means that we've arrived in that one place. And I think without cadences, you might get a bit lost in a forest of sort of wilderness of different chords without any bass, without any sort of anchor in different places. So, if we go back to that segment of melody, Isn't She Lovely? So we do this, that could be a cadence to G, that's really nice. Or it could be a cadence from C to F, which is also really nice. And there's just so much you can do. There's cadences that you can interrupt. So if you think you're going to C, but actually you go to A minor, and you direct it in different into unexpected directions. That's such a kind of weapon to be able to hold. Not a kind of bad weapon, like a good weapon. So from D to C, from D to G, from D to G, that's a very kind of comforting thing. But from D flat to F sharp, I mean, that's like that's mad. I mean, that's really exciting. That to be able to hold these weapons. Oh, I don't know about weapons, but to be able to hold these kind of colours in your paint pot means that you've got all these different directions to go in. And I mean, as I said before, this is all to do with kind of discovery. And if you like the movement from C to G, or the movement from E minor to F, then that's something that you can say that you like. But if you don't like something, then that's also a very positive decision. And this, I mean, all these things, all the kind of brights and the darks, and the cadences to keys, and the awareness that you're trying to make, you're trying to paint a kind of coherent picture within all this. These all kind of add up to a sense of arranging for a purpose, and arranging with all these different things that you've got to hand. And it doesn't mean that you have to use all of them, because otherwise it will become too convoluted and too cluttered. But to have them all there is very important. And I think for anyone who's, as I said before, for anyone who's thinking of doing things like arranging, and I mean, it doesn't have to be complex, it can be very simple, but it's just so important to kind of think about discovering things on your own, and thinking about getting out of education, which is often a destructive process. It's not always a good process, because it can make you believe things that you're told without questioning them, and that's a dangerous thing, especially if you're young. So you should always question everything you learn. That's an important point. But essentially, I mean, that doesn't mean you should reject everything you learn either, but it means that it's good to justify things that you're told by your own self-discovery. I mean, this obviously applies in things that are not musical as well. It's just like an idea of thinking about the world, I suppose. But to have things that you feel you own, I think is really important, and it means that an arrangement like this that I do, or whatever, it's personal to me, and I feel like someone else wouldn't have come up with the same arrangement, because they haven't done the same kind of, they haven't listened to the same music, and they haven't had the same life experiences, and they haven't, they don't like chords that I like in the same way that I do. So they might think one chord that I play is really dissonant, and I might think it's really consonant. And that all comes from your life, and it comes from your education, but it ultimately comes from your questioning the things that you're told, and just discovering things on your own, and taking the information that you learn and making it go on its head, and putting it into new context, and giving a simple melody like "Isn't She Lovely" a completely different turn with your harmony that you love, and your kind of information that you have grown up with, and that you've developed, and that you've kind of founded. And I've got a pad of stuff there that I've kind of written out over the last kind of year or so, of just harmonies and things that I like, and ways of combining keys, like combining colours if you're a painter. And that's sort of like my toolbox, and that's like my starting point, where I think, okay, I've got all these different colours, now how on earth am I going to use them? And that's like the most exciting moment ever, because you think, well, I don't know, and then that's really nice, because it means you can do it, and that's really important, I think. I'm going to come back and sit where I'm sitting.
When you said you would do this video, so I'm just quite interested in the process.
Yeah.
Do you sort of take the first few days to do the arrangement, and do you do that, just write it down, or do you work on it on the piano?
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly what I was just about to talk about. So that leads really nicely, thank you for that, it leads really nicely onto what I was going to say about my kind of process of arranging. So,
Yeah, that's it.
There you go, I got it. Okay, am I okay?
Yeah, fine.
Brilliant, okay. So I've talked about choosing a tune which is simple, and a tune that has a strong sense of essence, and a tune that you love is just the most important thing ever. You have to love the tune, otherwise what is the point in doing, in some respects, just what's the point in doing anything at all if you don't love it? It's kind of a different conversation, but yeah, so I choose a song that I love, and then I kind of try and work, before I sit down at the piano and think, well, whoa, my toolbox, and get all the paint out and stuff like that, I just have to try and think about the thing as a whole. And that is really important to kind of structure your music and your arranging. If you're composing or arranging, this is, not if you're improvising, that's something different, but that is important for improvising as well. But to have a sense of a shape, and a sense of a kind of journey. It sounds kind of almost cheesy to say like a journey, but it really, really is like that. You have to start somewhere and you have to end somewhere, and it has to make sense, it has to be a coherent journey. So I try and walk around like outdoors, or places that I'm not to do with the piano, bus rides and stuff like that, and think about kind of imagine listening to the thing in my head, you know, as a shape, and sometimes bits will kind of pop out to me as, oh, it'd be fun to do that, wouldn't it? It'd be really fun. So like on pure imagination, there's a bit where I kind of go, I do little on different speakers, and that was like one of the first things that came to me with that particular song, because that was like, I thought, oh, I don't know if I can pull that off, but it'd be really fun if I could. So that was a thing, and then I kind of jotted that down on paper, and then like a few other events like that kind of occurred to me as well. I thought, well, I could do that, or I could do this, or I could do, you know, I could twist this around, or kind of get away with doing that, or whatever it happens to be. And once I've got the overall shape in my mind, I might kind of write some of that down, because it is not necessarily on manuscript paper, maybe on plain paper, because that's really nice. It's like unbiased paper, and means you can like draw or do notes or words, or whatever it happens to be. And so you draw the shape like that on paper, which I've done. I think that's really helpful. And at that point, I sit down with my manuscript paper, my biased paper, and my piano, and I start to kind of arrange. I think, well, okay. I mean, I don't necessarily start at the beginning, because if you start at the beginning, I don't know if that's right. I don't think I've ever started at the beginning of any piece I've ever written. So often, if things are happening in my mind that I've kind of sparked off by thinking about the little blah, 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 blah moment, or whatever it happens to be, I'll fill those out, because they're kind of happening in my mind at that moment. So don't be afraid to jump around in the process between the beginning and the end, or the dense and the complex, because if you don't get the thoughts down, then you might lose them. It's frustrating when you come up with something great, and then you get home and you think, well, man, I didn't write that down, and I just can't remember it. And that is always a bit of a kind of sad moment when that happens. So I would recommend writing or recording. I record quite a lot of things on my phone of me playing the piano. I've got like a stack of things which if I'm lacking in inspiration, I go to that shelf, and I take things off and I listen to them, and some of them I really don't like, and some of them I like, and both of those are very, very important, and it moves you forward. But record and notate your things, not in terms of notes necessarily, but just in terms of shapes or ideas. So then you start arranging, and you fill out the sections that you have sort of imagined, and then, I mean, I personally use the piano, because the piano for me is like a harmonic vehicle. It's the best ever, because you can do all the notes at the same time. Some people do it on guitars. I've always wanted to be able to play the guitar, but I'm not very good at it. So for me, the piano is the best. I just kind of it's up to you really. But singing is really important. I mean, I have to check I can sing some notes sometimes, and check that things work as lines. Because as I said before, if you think in a way that's too vertical, then your piece will become just a sort of thing where one part's going to be jumping up like over an octave for a line, which you know that's it's not good. You can't do that. And if you ever give your music to other musicians, they won't like it because they have to play lines that just don't work as melodies in themselves. So that's something you have to really tweak when you're arranging. Then basically, when you've got enough material that you feel has been produced organically, like in your head or on the piano, then I personally jump to Sibelius, because Sibelius is a way, first of all, of backing it up. I mean, if there was a fire and I lost the pieces of paper, or I just dropped them in a lake or whatever, then I lose them. And so by putting them onto Sibelius, I can make sure they're safe on my hard drive and things like that. And also, it is a way to hear it in a quick way. And I wouldn't recommend going straight onto Sibelius, because it kind of takes away your imagination. It's like instant gratification. If you can hear everything you've written immediately, then there's no there's a lesser process involved, I think. So start on paper if you can, and try and do it as long as you can. But for me personally, I think Sibelius is a really amazing tool. So I do go on there eventually, and I get everything sorted, and I make sure the parts are coherent, and I print it out, and then I record, and the recording is quite a long process. It's very hard work. Because I'm quite a perfectionist, I don't really tend to eat very much. My family has to remind me to eat when I'm recording, because you can get really locked into your process and say, oh, I really want to finish this part, whatever it happens to be. But I'll record the parts, maybe four to 8 bars at a time, in my music room at home. I've got some photos which I'll show you after I've talked a bit about this, of my space and and then what it is to record it, all that kind of stuff. But I'll record all those parts, and I'll wear my headphones and I'll read it off the sheet, and I'll make sure everything's in sync. When I record all the parts, I'll get everything in sync, and then I'll export it, and I'll whiz it up to my loft. In my loft, there's a room. There's a room with white cupboards against one wall, and it's my recording space. So I get my camera and I sit against the wall, and I have to sit, so there's the door of the cupboard is right behind my head, so you can't see the door. So it just looks like a white wall, which is nice. And I do that, and it's a strange thing about my own mind, but when I've recorded a part so many different times against, I tend to remember them. It's a bit of a strange thing. So I do sing the parts as I recorded them, along with the full recording. And sometimes I actually export just a few parts, so I can sing my part on top, and it makes more sense, because otherwise you're just sitting there singing the melody and it doesn't make any sense. So I record singing along to each part as the part is written, and essentially that's the end of the process in some ways. I put them all into a program called Final Cut. I forgot to say, the program I record my audio with is called Logic, and I kind of grew up with Logic, and it's a nice place to be. And Final Cut is a video editing software. And some people do really amazing kind of whizzing around effects, like where you can make people like wear crowns and things like that, and it follows your head, and that's amazing. But I tend to keep my music videos quite simple, because otherwise it just detracts from the music, I think. Though I would love to be able to do that crazy stuff, but that's like a different thing. So I really just do it straight. I get one whole take of doing them, which I'm pleased with. I changed my shirt, which for some reason people really like.
Change
I changed my hair as well, yeah. and it's all fun. It's just like a fun thing to do. Then that's it really. I mean, I export it in a format that YouTube likes, and then I put it onto YouTube. And it's always a bit hard to kind of say, not goodbye, but it's sort of like you're giving your ownership up a little bit to people all over the world, and it's a bit weird to do that.
Can I ask
yes.
just a simple question? The melodica solo, is that an improvisation straight through, or yeah?
No, it is.
So
yeah,
you're not actually writing anything.
No, I don't write that. That's like I just do loads and loads of them, and pick the one I like.
Yeah.
That's quite hard because I have to film at the same time.
Yes.
I don't know if I'll be able to mime thing. It might be really hard. But that's. I've got a photo of. I've got a cat at home. I really love her, and she's got a cat scratcher. And I actually got a lamp which was higher. One was bigger than the other, so I put one lamp on a cat scratcher to make it the same light on both sides of the melodica. And I got the mic at the top that you can't see in the camera, and just did take after take after take. And it gets tedious. It really does. You have to believe in it, because if you don't, you will die. you will not last the process in the same way, and whatever. So does that answer your question? That's basically my process for the vocal ones at least. Yeah.
Do you record the parts in any particular order? Like start with the bass?
I start with the bass because the bass is like the foundation of a lot of the harmony, and I work up from there. The melody is like my reward. When you sing the melody and it works on the harmony, it's like the best feeling in the world. So I do bass upwards, yeah.
And did you used to sing in choir?
Sort of, yeah. When I was a young boy, when I had my high voice, I sang in operas. I sang in. I don't know if any of you know. There's a Benjamin Britten opera called The Tone of the Screw, which is unbelievable. If you don't know it, listen to it. That harmonically completely shattered my kind of whole mind. And I was 12 or 13 when I did it, and I loved it. I did it 3 times. I was really lucky. I did it at ENO in London. I did it in Spain and Italy, where the food and everything is lovely, and it was just the most amazing experience ever. And you had to learn how to sing in a way that projected across the whole, because there was no amplification. You have to. I did things like the magic flute, where there were 3 boys and things like that as well. I don't know if any of you know that. Yes.
On this subject, you might possibly be a sort of living proof of the idea of reincarnation, because you've got so much music in your music. Have you listened to lots and lots of music?
I really have. The most important thing is that you listen to the music that you enjoy listening to. I really don't believe in the people that, like, especially educators, who sort of say, listen to this and learn it. And you just have to be so careful, because this is like, especially when you're young, this is just this is your foundation of your like person. So, but if you find things you love, just listen to them and absorb them. And a lot of jazz musicians do this thing where they listen to a solo, they write it out, and or learn it by ear. I learn it by ear, and that helps to absorb someone's thing right down to the very phrasing that they play. And yes, I mean I really have. I've listened to. I mean, I grew up listening to classical music because my mum is a fiddle player. She teaches at the academy, and so was my grandfather, and I'm the third generation there.
So you do the jazz?
I am. I'm a jazz pianist at the academy, and I do everything else on the side. I don't really have lessons in anything other than jazz piano at the moment. I mean, I studied singing when I was a young boy, because it just helps to have. That's like the one thing I've got. That's the one thing that I can believe in my technique on, because I've been really taught it. But I'm now trying to learn how to play the piano, which is nice because I'm doing it out of choice, not out of duty, and that's so important. You know. But yeah, just listen to as much music as you can. Go to concerts. Meet people who are musicians, play with people as much as you can, and just do this thing I was saying with the discovery of dark and bright, all these different sounds. Just do it, because it means that you've got the stuff at your fingertips and you can use it. You know. Are there any other questions on that particular thing with the production of vocal videos and singing?
What do you use to film yourself?
Well, either I use, when I do instrumental stuff with my instruments, I use a really old analog tape camera, which I've been told is dreadful. It's really, really bad. I'm going to try and get a new one. For my vocal videos, I confess, I use the Mac in camera, because it's the most user-friendly thing there is, for me. I've got a little stool, and I put the laptop on there, and I sit with my head against the crack of the cupboards, and I sing with the laptop facing me. That's what I use, which I guess means that quite a lot of people could do it. I don't have anything particularly. I mean, I've got a little microphone that I use for everything. You don't need a lot of equipment to make music that is heartfelt and good. You just need like an imagination, really.
When I first met Bobby McFerrin, he just played piano and sang very simply, and then he sort of taught himself to do lots of other things. Your vocal range is extraordinary. Is it something you work on, or do you just hear a note and you can pitch it and you can sing it?
Well, I was always used to singing high notes because I did it. Like, I just did it in operas, and I could do it. And it seemed silly not to be able to do it afterwards, after my voice broke. So I just carried on, I suppose. I mean, I'd love to be able to give you like a recipe for having a larger range, but I don't know. I just sang high, and I just sang high. I mean, when I did Isn't She Lovely, I hit a G at the end. It's a G, and with this one I actually hit an A because I just pushed myself to do it. I didn't. If you strain, then you're going to damage your voice. But yeah, completely. Don't strain. Don't strain at all. I mean, for the low notes, I just get up early in the morning, and if I've got a cold, it's a bonus, you know. But
when your voice broke, did you lose the high notes for a while?
Well, I mean, basically, I was used to having my little falsetto head voice as a boy, and that was like the goal. You know, when you get a little boy who has a treble, like Once Around David City with a candle voice, you know, and it's really pure. And I did miss it for about a year. I couldn't do it, and I could only sing my chest voice, but I also couldn't go below like la. So it was like a bit of a little voice. And then I'm so lucky to have the lower register of my voice because it's kind of the bit I love using the most. As far as the high bit goes, I just sing high. But if you strain,
can you blend it in?
I've tried to. I do.
Where there's a break, or can you?
I do things like la 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 into my different voices to try and get them blending. That's kind of hard, but because if you go like la, that's my chest voice, and then like la, it's my head voice, and they sound fairly similar. I hope, and that's kind of what I've been working on, trying to get the sound, like the colour of my voice, to be quite similar. Otherwise, it sounds like you know, you get those people that can go like la, like that, and I try to avoid that. I guess I'm just really lucky. But I have made a conscious effort to try and make the colour, like the kind of tessiture of my voice, be blending with my voice.
because it's interesting. It's quite a soft grain sound you use when you're recording. So contrary to everything that we're fed at the moment, and things like the voice. Don't get me started.
No,
But that's so wonderful for the blend. Obviously, you can blend with yourself, but it also makes, because the tuning's so pure and it's such a soft grain sound, that it means that I think people can listen to the very complex harmonies and they can accept them.
Yeah.
Because it just works.
Yeah,
like that. So
yeah. I mean,
appreciate
when I record, I put the mic very close to my mouth, like here.
Yeah, you're not.
Because
making
if I
much
do it like this, I
noise.
have to sing out, and that it does make the sound harsher, you know. So I sing quite softly when I'm recording, and that means I guess you're right. It makes it kind of easier to listen to. Because if I was going like la all the time, it would just be like, you know, overload. Yeah.
In the week that you're doing it, round about Wednesday, do you have a sort of moment of despair when you, why am I doing Stevie did it so well? What's the point? You know?
Sort of. I normally have that moment of despair on like Monday just before lunch,
Okay.
and then I have lunch, and either I think, you know, this is not going to work, I'm going to go and play some badminton or like ride my bike, or I think I'm just going to do it and I believe in it, and even if you don't believe it, you have to push through. I mean, normally, by day 2, if I'm not feeling it, I don't do it. But I was feeling the pure imagination, so I just did it. And I had a moment on, actually it was Sunday to Sunday, so it wasn't Monday to Monday, but it was, I had a moment on Sunday where I just got a whole lot of ideas and I got that down. And that was where I felt, even if I don't believe in one bit, I can always come back to this. And once you've established that one thing, then you can go on. But I mean, there's obviously doubt. You know, you don't want to destroy a song. You want to complement it, and that's just really important. And that's why you have to be aware of the amount of harmony that you're wielding. Just shouldn't be overbearing, you know. You know.
Do you ever reject a song? Do you ever think, I can really do something with this, and then get halfway through and think, actually,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
not going to end up hard?
Well, sort of, yeah. I mean, normally I only kind of say I will definitely do a song when I have heard certain bits in my head that I know will work. But it's like instead of pure imagination, I was originally going to do the Flintstones theme tune. Sort of like, and it was going to be really fast. And I sort of tried that for a bit, and I found that it was just a bit too fast, a bit too sort of like, there was too much going on. So if I added any more, it might explode. So that can happen. And same thing with really slow songs. It might just like ground to a halt. If you put so much weight on the lorry, it will just like stop, you know. So there, you have to find, you just have to search for songs and don't be afraid to discard them. But don't be afraid to stick with an idea as well. So that's really important. Yeah.
Have you recorded any of your own songs yet?
I have, yeah. I can play you one if you like. Yes. It's not an a cappella song, but it's a song with when I play different instruments, and it's really personal. It's quite personal to me because it's not. It's funny. It's interesting because a lot of people love the singing videos, so I haven't. You know, so like, and people really demand them. They sort of say, "Well, make more a cappella videos," and I do. So I do, and I love it. But it's, you know, a cappella is one thing that I love to do, and there are other things I love to do, and this is one of them. It's, you know, The Road Not Taken. The Road Not Taken is a poem by Robert Frost. It's quite a famous poem. I'm sure many of you know it. And I really love the poem, and I've known it for many years. And I just thought, in the same way that I didn't want to spoil a good song, you have to not spoil a good poem, but I thought I'd just do my take on it and see how it came out. And I never intended to put this one on YouTube until about the end of the process. And I thought, hey, I like this, you know. And so I did it. I had to kind of start again because of the instrumental difficulties with filming, but I'll talk about that in a minute.
What's up? I'm Epic Mealtime.
Oh, what's up?
Sorry about that.
I rap too.
I don't know what.
Yeah, I wrap everything in bacon. I mean,
Then took the others just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because 'twas grassy and haunted where, though as for that the passing there, I want them really above the same.
Yeah, it carries on in a similar manner anyway. And the ending is... yeah, it's true. It's called The Road Not Taken anyway. That's fine, I'll leave it be.
We'll check it out when we get home.
All right, fine. Yeah, just before I talk about the internet, I'll talk about a few of the difficulties of recording with instruments which you don't get with voices. There's no way that you could mime the drums, like no way at all. And that was a real struggle. Well, that was a much more of a struggle because you have to do it in one take, and you have to be like no messing around. You have to just do it, and it has to be filmed and everything. So I've got these guitar stands on above my drum kit, and I managed to hook the camera to it face down, and I had to reach up and press go every time I wanted to do a take, and then press record on the Logic, and then sit at the drums. And I had to memorise the form because you couldn't look at anything, which is fine. And then you just have to do it over and over again, and that's a different process from the singing, where you can do things over and over and over again to get them right if you need to. Same with the bass. I mean, I thought I wouldn't mind the bass, so that bass is me recording it as well as filming it, and that's like it's just a different thing. It's harder. I mean, this one took me a much longer, like a month or two, to do this one.
So did you do the drums first?
I did the drums first, because that's like a bit like the bass in a cappella track. That's what lays down the form. That's what keeps things in time.
And you didn't do it with a click, you just did it, that was your...
No, I did it with a click.
You
I did it, yeah, so I wore headphones and I did it with a click. And yeah, I don't have enough faith in my kind of ability to stay the same tempo. So I did it with a click, and that's what I did.
Did you put some Sibelius stuff down to play along with, or just play along with the click?
I just played along with the click for that. So I had to memorize. I basically recorded it, and then I re-recorded it. So I recorded it, and because I find that when I'm recording, that's when ideas happen. So I recorded it, and the ideas happened, and I finished recording it, and it was pretty rough, but it wasn't meant to be perfect. And then I did, the drums were just whatever, and then I did it properly. And having heard it enough times, I knew what the thing was. So I just had to play the drums and film it, and that probably took the longest out of all the instruments because you have to get it right, and then you do all the other instruments next to that. So I think I did bass next, and then piano, and then voice, and the mandolins after that, and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, yeah, that's the video editing, which is much harder. Is it worth trying another? Is it worth trying another video? I've got one more video I'd quite like to kind of play. This is one I put up at Christmas. It's a Christmas song called "I Saw Three Ships," and this was by far the most work out of any video I've made. It has about 30 different audio tracks and 20 different video tracks, and it was really hard to do, but it was so satisfying to get it right. I've got some screenshots of me making it on Logic and me making it on Final Cut that I can show you after this.
Yeah, they're really nice.
on Christmas Day. I saw the ships come sailing in on Christmas Day in the morning. But what was in the ships all three on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day? Yeah, what was in the ships all three on Christmas Day in the morning? Christ and His lady on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. It's baby Christ and His lady on Christmas Day in the morning. We're sailing to Bethlehem on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. We're sailing to Bethlehem on Christmas Day in the morning.
That's like a different thing, really. Yes, I do. I really want to do a thing where I do things myself live, and that's like a long-term project with like a keyboard and a double bass and a percussion and a guitar and a microphone and me and stuff like that, and then looping it all and like building up huge sound wells and destroying them at will, and it really I'm so excited about that. I'm so excited, but I'm going to need like more money and stuff to do that because I'm a student. You know what I mean? I can't just go out and buy this stuff.
Surely you could get somebody to sponsor you with it.
I'm hoping so. I mean, if any of you would like to kind of
actually
give anything to
I've spoken to someone already about who has the hologram company that did the various things recently, the Michael Jackson hologram and the Elvis Presley, and they're very interested.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
I'll report.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, brilliant.
And if that doesn't work, I'll manage your crowdfunding.
Oh, great. Okay, great. Brilliant.
Offers are coming in.
Yeah, fine. So that's something I'm looking to do. I'd love to be a part of a whole lot of different groups, and that's when it's like if you go to a record company and they sign you, which is a possibility at this stage, but I don't know if we're going to do that yet. They might like own you, and that's like the same thing as like listening to what people teach you. It's like you just don't do that. You know, it means that I would not be able to play piano in someone's group or be a part of a singing group that sings like William Byrd music and stuff like that. And I want to do all these things. So I'm being a bit cautious. But I definitely want to get a band, a whole lot of bands, and me as well, together and just do it all. But I'm first year at the Academy and I've got 3 more years to go. So it's a bit of a sort of time of sorting out what I want to do. And quite a lot of people are sort of saying, come on, make a record right now. And I'm sort of saying, well, hold on a second, you know, I want to study and I want to make more music at home. I really want to work at home, so that's the environment I'm used to, you know.
But you also seem to be all very well set up with your website and your Facebook and your Twitter.
Yeah,
I mean, that seems to be in place now. So
yeah, that leads quite nicely onto the internet, doesn't it? To talk about all of that. I'm just thinking about these photos. Should we get out of the way and just show these screenshots of various things? This is just snippets of my kind of process. This one here that's the road not taken, the video, the penultimate video you just saw. This is Final Cut, my video making world, and you can see the little rings of colour where you can edit the colours of the different screens. Quite straightforward. The blue tracks are obviously the video tracks, and you take them out and put them in at will, and that's essentially that's the game. Should we see another one? I think the next one I saw 3 ships. I don't know. Yeah, there it is. So in terms of numbers, the video track's a bit more substantial here, and there's more toing and froing in terms of like taking stuff out, putting stuff back in. You see, you can click on a video track and change the colours and all of that. Should we do another one?
Yes.
Okay. That's a vocal one. It's the same kind of thing. It's just like a vocal thing. That one beneath it is the I Saw 3 Ships folder in iMovie, which is where it's like a railway station. I have to put all the footage through that and come out the other side before I can go to Final Cut. And there's loads of, I don't know if it's going to load, but that's just a little shot of like just the tons of stuff that I have to deal with that. I don't know if it wants to know. I don't know. Should we try another one? That's you kind of get the idea. That is that's I saw 3 ships again. I don't know what the idea behind doing that again was, but should we do another one? That's just showing how you can make things smaller and bigger, and you have to get everything in the right place and fade them all in, fade them all out, and it's a bit of an adventure. I had to work out, with our saw 3 ships, there were so many instruments, I had to work out the best way to put them all on show at once. That was really fun, but very hard. And you have to make sure that you get it right, because you don't want things getting in the way of stuff, and then when something comes in, you have to phase something else out and bring it into place and all that kind of stuff. So, that's like a little snippet into that process. That's my laptop and me editing. You probably don't need to see that, that's just my laptop. That's a harmonic discovery, you probably don't need to see either.
Yes, I'd like to see that.
Oh, you would like to see it? Okay, did you open that one up? This is like a potted triadic justification on every chord. The original is here at my feet. It's just every triad that works like over every chord. So like the major chords and minor chords and dominant chords. Dominant chords are the most colourful, I guess, with the most possibility, because you can. But I mean, just really quickly, like play the piano. Basically, like on a minor chord, this is all for like in jazz they've got the 2-5-1 cadence to C. So like on D minor, that's the neutral. But these are all other colours you can put on top of it, and they're all so cool. And it's just like this is part of the cycle of fifths thing. So if you go up from D, you go up to F. It's like, and then you get to really amazing. You get to sort of D major over D minor and things like that. It's all very exciting. And when you, as a piano player, you often have to accompany other people soloing. So at that point, if you were accompanying a turnaround, you might make it really plain, or you might choose to make it really kind of like, stuff like that. But there's so much you can do with put different notes. But basically, it's triadic combination. So C and D at once, a C major, or C sharp and B flat at the same time, like as a dominant chord, or these colours, and it's so cool. And as a dominant chord, you can do just like that, just very bland jazz thing, or you can do a classical thing, or you can do the like really diminished like a kind of thing, or just like a plain sus thing, and they're all different colours. It's in my pad of paint. So this is basically, that's just like a notation of it, and I try to make it into a, see there on the C, you can go, if you're improvising, you can go, it kind of goes E minor G, B minor G, A, and A is like one of my favourites. It's this note here, which is C sharp, so it's not allowed. That's why I love it. And so if you go up in G, B minor, D major, and then you get to A major, which is really cool, and then F sharp minor, like that, B, which is like this, like it's really crazy colours and stuff. And E is the last one, which is this. And then if you go darker, you get B flat and F, which are really like mellow, whatever. I basically try to group them in a way which is logical, and I'm hoping to kind of photographically memorise the whole sheet. I don't know if that's a possibility, but so I can have all these colours play within. The time scale of things is different, and you have to be harmonically aware immediately about the different chords and the amount of stuff you're going to play, and obviously the number of notes in the chord and all this kind of stuff. So that's just like a little thing that I made. And on the other side of the sheet is the other 6 keys. That's basically it, I think. And what's next? That's my music room. That's me. That's my setup. I'm recording a vocal track there, and you can see my drum kit with my guitar stands, from which I hung the camera in Road Not Taken, and my little microphone with the pop shield and Logic and my speakers. and my melodica on the floor, and I'm displaying in the window above the computer, and a piece of bark above the computer, and the uplighter, and the keyboard, and the floor, and etc. That's my space. That's like my favourite room in the world. What's next? That's the cat scratcher light melodica filming thing. The microphone is not. The microphone is above the picture, so you can't see it, and the laptop is filming it. And that was that. My mum did not think it was wise. I don't know why. Yeah, that's that. There it is. It's another picture of my mum's head. Because some others, there I am, yeah.
Did she teach you some double bass when you were?
No, she's a fiddle teacher. And she teaches violin, and she's really amazing. And to think about all the, it's quite easy as a parent, I guess, to be pressurising and sort of say, well, go and be a star and all this kind of stuff. And people have sort of said, well, come and be a star, and it's a bit like weird. And I couldn't ask for any more really, because it's just completely on my side. We share an instinct about almost everything. So.
Is she grounding you a little?
Grounding?
I mean, because obviously you get all these invitations.
Yeah.
She's sort of like making it real and saying just.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly. I mean, I mean, I'm living at home for my studies, which is like the best decision I ever made. Well, probably maybe not. I might have made better ones, but that was a really good one. And because everyone else is having to live away from home, and I guess they want to escape their families. I don't know. I've never really felt that. I get on so well with everyone in my family that it seems silly to move away. So I'm living at home. So yeah, she's always there to put things in perspective,
yeah.
to ground me if I fly away,
yeah.
Or might fly away. And it's really nice. It's really good to have her there. I mean, yeah, everyone in my family is brilliant, really. But she's like the one that brought me up, I suppose, and has. Yeah, all this stuff. I mean, she's an amazing fiddle player, and yeah, those videos are just. We just got some jazz tunes out and played them. That's really fun. It's nothing serious. It's just a bit of fun, really. We do a lot of playing together, which is really nice.
Who's your piano teacher then?
My piano teacher. I have two piano teachers. And one of them is Tom Corley, and the other is Nicky Isles. And between them, they are wise. They're a wise duo of stuff. It's like a different mindset learning from somebody, because I've never done it before in terms of piano. So it's,